the KJCA Fall Classic, and that's in Logan County, correct? And that's going to be Friday through Sunday, so the 28th, 29th, and 30th. So Nikki and Nikki will both be down there for that, so come join in on the fun. Then we have our Eden Shale Open House, which Mr. Dan Miller's here today with us, not up at Eden Shale. And so that's on October 13th, and that starts at 10 a.m. Something that's the UK Beef Extension Specialist team is starting a new program in October, and it's a bull value assessment program, and they are going to be doing, I think the series is just 2 meetings total, and it's at 5 different locations across the state. And so that's just going to be talking about kind of everything with Dr. Bullock that you look at when you're looking to buy a new bull or evaluating the current bulls that you're using in your herd. So if you have any questions about that, you can contact Ben Kreitz. He is the Master Cattleman Coordinator, IRM Coordinator, and you can get more information on that. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Higgins. So a little bit about Dr. Higgins that I know. Today he's going to be talking about infrastructure improvements. And so across the state, Dr. Higgins has a lot of really cool projects with producers. Just from our experience with Eden Shale, he's got a lot of cool projects up there that he's implemented. And then even here in the facility that you all are sitting in, he's helped design some of the aspects of this facility too. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Higgins. Thanks. You're welcome. And if you can just clip that wherever.
That work, Jacob? Okay, ready, set, go? Okay. Farm infrastructure improvements. All right, so wait, just a background, some of the stuff that can give you a little background stuff. I'm the Director of Animal and Environmental Compliance, and I'm also housed in Biosystems and Engineering. So basically, I come at this with a different perspective. With that said, I usually start off with this, like what's the first thing you think about when you see this? Half full? Half empty? Could it be, I'm in engineering, so the glass is twice as big as it needs to be, right? You could talk to someone that teaches chemistry and they'll say it's completely full. It's half full of water, it's half full of air. Could this also be my glass of water? Could this be all of the above at the same time? Yes, it is. So it's all about perspective. So with perspective, all right, so I'm in engineering, you all are beef cattle producers. What is your output? What is it you produce? Normally I get calves, cows, or carcasses, pounds, weight, average daily gain, whatever. But for me, from my standpoint, it's grass, it's forages. Because the forages that you have on the farm dictate how many critters you can have and how long they can be in a field before you move them. I got this photo off the NRCS because it shows this, this is actually 2 farms that are separated by this fence line that's kind of running down this ridge. This over here is dark and green and thick and very productive. It's got some critters on it. And then this over here has also got critters on it as well, but I can't tell the height, but I can tell it's really, really short. The NRCS came up to this particular farm and wanted to see something, and so they actually take a cone or a column cylinder, and they basically set it on top of the ground, and they pour an inch worth of water in it, and they time how long it takes to infiltrate. And then so they actually set it up, and they pour an inch of water in there, and they time it, and it actually takes like 12 minutes for that water, inch of water, to basically infiltrate through that soil surface. Since they're at this place, they crossed over the fence, and they do it over here on the other side of the farm, on the other side of the fence. They put in that inch of water, and they time it, and it actually takes 28 hours. So my thing is like a couple of things. If your output is actually grass, grass needs water. It needs to infiltrate the soil surface. You need architecture on this grass to be able to receive sunlight. You need a soil matrix that's deep enough to basically grow, have roots that actually find nutrients and water. So if your output is actually grass, then that should be an epiphany that changes everything. The thing about it is, with this particular farm that I like so much, is that, I mean, you can see the productivity that this guy's got, but then you can see that this 28 hours is basically like asphalt. The thing is that this guy right here owned both of these farms. He sold this farm to another guy a year earlier. So what did this guy do in a year's amount of time to change that infiltration rate? He compacted the soils. He got on it with heavy equipment and heavy animals and continuously grazed it and never moved them. And so basically, you're taking a hit in productivity. Now, a lot of people shifting gears, like if I was going to buy a farm, and let's say I bought a 100-acre farm, how many critters would I put on a 100-acre farm? How many animal units do you allow on a per-acre basis? If I had a 100-acre farm, could I get 50 animals? 2 acres apiece? But can you see where I could buy both of these pieces of property and my productivity at 2 animals per acre would be completely different on both of these? Because you're not measuring the forages. Anyway, forages, how does this work? It works like that. So I stole this video off of Ray Smith, who's our forage extension specialist. And so this is continuous grazing versus rotational grazing on orchard grass. So this is taking it down to 1 inch and taking it down to 3.5 inches. And this is time-lapse photography over 5 days. Because I think this is really cool. Because, again, if your output is grass, look at the productivity on the right versus what's going on the left. So what you're doing on the left is you're basically robbing all the starch out. And there's a couple things. Again, from that engineering standpoint, I look at this and I got leaf architecture. I got a crown. So when it rains, basically that rain is basically going to hit that crown, and the organic matter is going to basically absorb that impact, and you're not going to have any erosion. You got organic matter there. You got productivity. Oh, look, it's doing it again. Conversely, on the other side, basically, that's continuous grazing. So in my standpoint, looking at, come on, show it again. Looking at this, if your output is actually grass, you're actually walking pounds off of critters to get a mouthful of feed. In this situation, they can take 1 bite and they can have a mouthful. In this situation, they got to take multiple steps and multiple bites to get a mouthful. So it's not efficient, okay? So on the efficiency side, all right, so number of paddocks. So this is basically the benefits of grazing, rotational grazing. The more paddocks you have, okay, the less time they spend in a field, and the higher your grazing efficiency goes, okay? I look at this and I actually go, at say like 8 pastures, it says 50%. I think it's closer to 70. So there's a difference. There's a 40% difference there in just productivity. But the thing about it is in order to do rotational grazing, you got to have fences and you got to have waters in those fields to basically facilitate rotational grazing. If you don't have it, then you're not going to be able to do rotational grazing. Again, from an engineering standpoint, I look at farming essentially as it's an industrial model, okay? So for instance, you take one 1,500-pound cow, one 1,500-pound cow. In 1 year, she is going to consume 30 tons worth of water. 30 tons. Now, how are you going to get it to her? You're going to carry it to her in a pail, a bucket. You're going to drop out a garden hose. You're going to let her drink out of some intermittent stream, some pond that the quality varies like this time of the year. It's covered with algae and all that other kind of stuff. Or you're going to put in an infrastructure system of pipelines that actually allow you to do rotational grazing. She's going to create 23 tons of manure. Again, if she's out grazing and distributing that manure evenly, that's not a problem. But if she's in some sort of confinement, that means you have to have a manure handling facility. You got to move manure. She's going to consume 20 tons of forages. This is your rotational grazing right here. That's what she's going to do. She's going to walk around and she's going to eat 20 tons in a year. You're going to come into the wintertime and maybe feed her 2 tons of hay. Okay? So you got to move that hay. The thing about it that kills me on this is that this is 10% of this 20 tons. But this is the period of time that we tear our farms to pieces to feed 2 tons of hay. Tear them to pieces. So you got to think, how am I going to move that hay? How am I going to get through it? The big one here is even though she's consuming 30 tons of water and 20 tons of forages, which is 50 tons of material that you need to put in front of her somehow, she's consuming 62 tons of air. Now, what does air weigh? And you might think, well, I got critters outside and there's tons of air, there's air everywhere, right? But no, it's not that way. When they're outside and it's been 95 degrees and 95% humidity, what is the temperature? What is that humidity? How is that affecting her productivity? Is she in a confinement situation where you need to move air through a building? Is there any dust, pollutants, pathogens, bacteria, respiratory problems that you need to move out of that building? So there needs to be fresh air constantly coming in. But it's not just fresh air, it's the temperature and the humidity of that air that matters as well. So I look at this and I go, okay, you got to move this stuff. How are you going to move it? How are you going to do things? And this is just some old thing that was out of, this is like a World War II kind of propaganda kind of a thing, because we needed farmers to basically grow food to feed the military, because the military basically moves on its belly. And this is kind of this Norman Rockwell picturesque kind of thing, but I'm looking at it from an engineering standpoint and I'll go, okay, What's the distances from the house to the barn and go from this barn to that barn? You got forages right here in a silo. You got a grain storage silo right there. So you got an inventory. How much inventory do you need? How much space do you need to have? It's got a power plant on it. I'm also looking at where the shade is. You can kind of see. I could put a water in over here in the shade, and it might freeze in the wintertime and might not fall out again until March, okay? Because the proximity of things matter. Compass points matter. I mean, this guy's raising hogs. You got to consider prevailing wind. He's got some critters right here. He's got pastures. He's got a lane. How do you move things? How do you distribute things? You got these old gamble-straw roofs and stuff like that on these barns and stuff like that. Well, what's airflow? How do you get air in this barn? How do you move air through this barn? Because I go in a lot of these barns, these old ones. I mean, basically, they got an 8-foot ceiling on them, and the loft is 35 feet. Well, we don't store hay like that anymore. So you got to think, all right, how do I utilize these structures now? Cupolas are great. They move a little bit of air. But now we recommend ridge vents, like the one on this barn, that runs the continuous length of the barn. Again, you got to move air. So this is what I think most cattle producers think about. Handling facilities, herd health, nutrition, genetics, forages, reproduction. Am I going to calve in the spring? Am I going to calve in the fall? What kind of diets am I going to have? What breed of cattle am I going to raise? But see, again, I come from engineering and I come in from environment, okay? And neither one of those are on there. Okay. Whoa, no, 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 no. Okay. My thing is because here's the deal. All right. Environment is not on here, but what you have to realize is the environment, okay, whatever definition you go by, controls 70% of the output of these animals, okay? So nutrition. I can have a diet that puts on 3 pounds a day, 3 1/4 pounds a day. Okay, but if those critters are standing in belly-deep mud, then basically they're not gaining, okay? So that's not doing you any good. Genetics. I can breed animals to some great bull, whatever his name is, and then got these nice dams and all that other kind of stuff. But if those calves are born and they come out and they freeze and they stick to the ground, okay, then genetics did me absolutely no good whatsoever. So the environment, okay, controls 70% of their production. And also just layout is also the thing too. So from my standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, if you actually design your operation for maximum beef cow productivity and moving this materials and this commodities and stuff, then you will have that productivity, but you've also taken into consideration the environment. So it's just like this facility right here. You're moving animals. It's got air movement. You got to move commodities in and out, animals, the feedstuffs, all that kind of stuff. It's the same thing. You're just trying to optimize it. This is what I think controls animal production, okay, the most, all right? It's the surface on which they stand, the space provided them for them to move, eat, and drink, lay down, whatnot, the air they breathe, we talked about that a little bit, and the means by which they're confined. And all of these factors are basically controlled by space and time, okay? It's kind of like a Star Wars thing. So surfaces, all right. So if I got a critter that's standing in 4 to 8 inches worth of mud, its feed intake goes down on average by 12%. Why does it go down? Because walking through mud is drudgery, okay? And it doesn't want to do it, so it doesn't eat. However, total feed required goes up by 12%. Why is that? Same reason. Walking in mud creates drudgery, so the animal needs to consume more feed. Therefore, your average daily gains are going down by 14% for 4 to 8 inches worth of mud, okay? So from an engineering standpoint, this is a double whammy, because if I solve that mud problem, this is what I get back. I get my 14% daily gains back, and I'm feeding 12% less feed. That is a 26, 27% increase in efficiency. There are factories down the road, Georgetown, everywhere, that will retool a factory floor plant to basically gain a 1% increase in efficiency. This is 27. But I got producers that go, oh, I can't have. No, you can't afford not to control mud. Mud costs you money. And if you got more mud, it just goes up from there. So the thing to think about, I do, is basically from an engineering standpoint, is what kind of surface do I need to build? What is the engineering that I need to know? Well, if I stand still, I'm providing 14 psi, pounds per square inch, to this floor, okay? Cattle are essentially twice that much, they're basically 27, okay? So that is the foot pressure they're providing to a surface. But this is standing, okay? The other thing to notice is 27 psi. Now you look at a D9 Caterpillar dozer is 16 psi. Do you see that? What that means is cattle provide 166% more pressure to a soil surface than a 50-ton bulldozer. Anybody that's done bulldozer work, anybody that's done winter feeding, this is a no-brainer, okay? But the thing is, this is standing. When that animal's walking, that foot pressure goes up to 48 psi because basically it's transferring that weight from 4 feet to 2, okay? So 48 psi is what they're actually creating. Therefore, in order to create an all-weather surface, you need to have something that has enough bearing pressure that beats 48 psi. So soft clay, sandy loam, that's a soil surface. That's basically soil texture right there. Whoa, dang it. Sorry. Which basically can't support the weight of cattle, okay? You go down and, okay, I got 55. All right, so 55 is greater than 48. That's compacted sand. Okay, so let's say you get a vacation, you go to the beach, and you're walking along the beach and someone calls you, texts you, and you stop, and the surf comes up and hits your legs, goes this way, and then recedes back. What happens to you? You sink. Because when you get these surfaces wet, they lose their strength. So that's not going to do it. Compacted gravel mixture will at 83, which is why the NRCS, Division of Conservation, and CAPE provide cost share dollars for heavy traffic pads made out of geotextile fabric and rock because they are designed to support the weight of cattle. Concrete, 6,000 psi, indestructible. That's why you put it around bunkers, feeding areas, waters, whatnot. That's why it's there. If you place it properly, 30 years, easily. Now, the problem with this 48 psi, this data, this is 50-year-old data or 70-year-old data, okay? So when this was collected in the 1950s, this is what we were raising back then, okay? I mean, basically, cattle are about the size of a large St. Bernard, okay? All right? Oh, no. Oh, that's Lyndon Johnson with a prize bull, all right? It's about a 3-year-old bull, all right? These are not miniatures. These are not dwarfs, okay? This is the genetics that we had at the time. This is the genetics that we could have, all right? Big differences. Imagine the foot pressures of these guys, okay? Money-wise, basically this just shows you that putting down an all-weather surface, any one of these is better off than not putting in any kind of surface at all. You're just going to spend more money. People don't realize. They go, I can't afford to put in these rock pads. No, you can't afford to. Because you can't afford not to put them in because you're losing so much money on additional feed and all that mud and all that drudgery, like this. So if I bring this animal into the stockyards, do I make more money off of it? It weighs more. No, you get docked. Okay, so mud costs you money. The way I look at this mud thing is if I got an animal that's in no mud, I can finish it out at 114 days at $62.50 per hundredweight, which is just relative dollars. If it's standing in 6 to 8 inches worth of mud and it's on the property for 3 more weeks, I gotta count them, I gotta tend to them, I gotta feed them, I gotta do whatever, okay? I might be losing market gains, but this is the amount of money that you end up losing for that amount of mud. So if that is the amount of money that you've lost, in my opinion, economic theory, that is the amount of money that you spend on a project to alleviate the mud. All right? All right, so if your output is actually grass, okay, then you need a soil matrix, okay? It's your most valuable resource, all right? So where was the soil originally on this barn? It was up to here, right? This area right in through here, that's not erosion that's taken that out where you can actually see daylight through these piers. That's not erosion. That's cow licking, okay? That's mineral they're trying to get. All right, so wherever you think that soil was on that barn, strike it out across that field, all right? And tell me what your output is. Is your output grass? And let's talk about the environment. People, normally beef cattle producers, I mentioned the word environment, and you get this sphincter tightening response, or, la, 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 la kind of thing, because they think water quality, they think regulations, they think environmental controls and interference with government and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. Environment is basically, ecology is one definition of the environment. I look at it from the physical environment. Are the animals standing in 95-degree heat? Are they standing in belly-deep mud? Are they standing in snow? Are they standing in a lush pasture? It's physical environment. There's also behavior environment too. These critters right here are actually running around in a circle because they think I am trying to kill them. Okay, they're in predatory mode, and the ones that are on the inside feel safe, and the ones on the outside don't, and so they're constantly moving in and out, and it's not productive. Okay, so no matter what your environment definition is, this is not a productive environment. All right. And that is the smartest animal on the property, right there, all right? Okay, so what I would like to do is basically control where animals go and control this mud business and so on and so forth. So it's basically, it's picking out where to put things as far as infrastructure. Because if your output is actually grass and you're doing winter feeding where you're taking a tractor in and you're doing these ruts and then you got this cow pugging and things like that where you're just destroying the vegetation, then you're destroying your output. All right, and some of the things to think about is basically the pressure of whatever vehicle you drive in is essentially the tire pressure plus add about 1 to 3 more points. Okay, so if I'm driving an ATV, I'm only looking at 5 to 15 psi of pressure. And we already talked about what a soil can handle, or started talking about it. A tractor's around 20, dualies around 60 psi. You get up into semis and concrete trucks, it's 95 up to 120 psi, which is compaction. Okay, which causes this. Okay, that's just a regular tractor tire running through there. It's like we're out there doing donuts, All right, this is what I call permanent damage, because basically that soil failed under the load-bearing pressure of that pickup truck that went through there in the wintertime, and it's permanent damage because you're not going to take the time to fix it. Okay, now imagine if that was a pasture where animals would trot it all across it, then you're not really seeing. This gives you an idea of how to see it. This is shifting gears, just different surfaces and things like that as far as hard clays, firm clays, soft silts, and so on and so forth, as far as the average pressure that they can provide. Again, what you're trying to beat is 48. So if I'm trying to beat 48, I mean basically all 3 of these fall below that, okay? And that's dry. And then you got to understand topography. So if I got animals up on here, I got well-drained soils, I got good places for doing things, but on these side slopes, basically I'm going to have erosion. And that erosion is going to get deposited down in here, and typically that's going to be your silts and stuff. So this particular area down in here with all that water and all the water that's going to be running off through here, because basically soil and water creates mud, but it also reduces strength. So this is not an area where I would do winter feeding, right? Does that make sense? And yet I go on farms, and then this, with the creek running through it, this is where they decided to feed. And then you can see the terracing across the hillsides and stuff. All right, again, this one, right along the creek. And then you can see all this, because what's happening here is you got a pug mark. All right, so at a certain moisture content, you get a pug, and basically that soil has now gone from a solid and it's turned into a plastic. Literally plastic. You could make pottery out of it. Okay, but then once that pug mark fills in with water and the cattle step on it again, now it's over 50% moisture, and now it turns into a liquid. Also with that creek, and you got wintertime feeding, what's going on here is also you got all this water that's running down to it, but you also got a higher water table in that particular soil. So this is not conducive for feeding if you actually want to have productivity. And then this is basically looking at, if I have a compacted gravel mixture, oh dang it, if I have a compacted gravel mixture and it's dry, I got 78 psi. But if I submerge it, it goes down to 39, which goes below that 48 threshold. And now I'm going to have something that's going to fail because it's wet, okay, which would be this. I could have a heavy traffic pad underneath there, but if it's submerged, it's going to be weak. So the whole thing is thinking about where do I'm going to put these things. All right, now we're shifting. All right, we've gone from mud, now let's talk about hay. If I take a roll bale and I store it outside, it's going to rain on it, okay? It's going to rain. It's a 5x6 bale, so it's going to rain on 30 square feet of area, and that 30 square foot of area is basically going to rot 42% of the bale. You're going to lose the outer 6 inches, and you're going to lose about 12 inches across the radius, okay? 42% gone. And then but the point is basically moisture ruins hay, correct? Okay, so if it ruins hay, and we also know that water and soil basically create mud, why would you feed roll bales basically in a draw like this? This guy's down the street from me. Why would you feed there? Because all this water is basically going to be running down through that area. It's going to run through the hay and it's going to run through the soil. So it's going to create mud and it's going to waste a lot of hay. This guy, I went through a county one time and I was driving through the county and I was like, pull over. I was with an extension agent and I was like, look at this. Again, same situation, just exaggerated a little bit. But that's a producer and I was like, let's don't pick on him, all right? This is a UK farm, so let's pick on UK. So this is what they're doing. So they're coming in through the gate, which is way over here, and they're driving all the way down in here at the top of this little head cullet, that they got, and they're putting in roll bales right there to feed. Meanwhile, there's a bunker up here with a heavy traffic pad up on the flat, okay? Water running through this one, water not running through this one. And you also have to expend the extra expense of driving down. And after you dropped off this roll bale, you're making an empty trip back. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? And then I come back, and the next year, it's even worse, okay? So I get all the farm crew, and I'm like, well, what are you guys doing? What are you thinking? And they're like, Higgins, we didn't think about any of this stuff before you started working here. Now that we are thinking about it, we'd really like for you to go get a job someplace else. So, true. And then this is us feeding. So now you give an animal a roll bale and you let them have full access to it. Okay, so they're going to eat some of it and they're going to lay on it. Okay, they're going to commingle it in with the mud. You got a calf there that's basically knee deep, hock deep. They're going to urinate on it, defecate in it. So what percentage of your hay do you lose when you feed like this? Anybody? 50. Okay, so anytime I get a question like this, I always want to hit the data. And so here's a data set with no feeder. So here's your no feeder stuff right here. So it starts off at about 35%, goes up to about 97%, with an average of about 58%. Average, okay? Now 97% would be one of our farms where we take a roll bale and we unroll it 150 feet out and we let them have it. And depending on what's going on that particular day, they can either eat some of it or they're going to lay down on it to get out of the mud. I call it bed and breakfast feeding, all right? But if you provide some sort of containment like a ring feeder, now I got a nice tight cluster of data right around 20%. You want to use something else, then you're looking at greater efficiencies. So then this, okay, is this come spring. So I go out there, come on, and I take this picture and that one, okay, and look at all that wasted hay, all right? So, and these calves standing in these puddles, is that good for them? No. So I'm looking at that and I'm like, who is going to clean all this up? Look at all this waste. And you don't have to worry about it because you don't work for UK, but I'm like, that's a waste. So I take the photo and then the PhD that's in charge asked the herdsman, he was like, how many roll bales did you feed? And he was like, oh, a little over 100. And he was like, over 100? You shouldn't have fed more than 50. There's your waste, okay? All right? And then this, buddy of mine took a photo of that. I'll come back to that. All right, so then I go back to this other UK farm, and this is our winter feeding area that we've torn all to pieces. All right, again, we got a liquid soil moving off. And then we've got two areas. So we got the area where basically we're on the outside of the pasture, and we've rutted this up to put portable diets in these bunkers. And then you got the cattle side of it, which is basically, that's a foot loss of soil. It's gone. It's either compacted or it's gone. I mean, and with these kind of slopes, it's gone, all right? So I look at this and I'm like, I want to create a functional design, all right? And so I got these voices in my head of access, location, shape, and dimensions. But what I wanted to do was like ask questions like, why do you even have to open a gate? Why do you have to deal with escapes and getting on and off the tractor and all that kind of stuff? Why don't you just come in off the farm road and come into that fence line and put in these little fence line cubbies, and then you never have to get off the tractor? So we designed them, okay? We set them up. And so we did this Cadillac model because it's got a roof over it. You got the GMC version. Don't give me a hard time about that gate. It got plumb. And then this is a wood version right here. We're just looking at different versions. And this one's mostly gravel and fabric, okay? And then this one is just a 3-section hay feeder that we take one of the sections out and bolt the other two basically in the fence line. Easy, okay? And then they're all in a line, and then all of this is basically heavy all-weather surfaces, all right? It's either geotextile fabric and rock, or it's rock, fabric, and plastic grid, or it's actual concrete, which is indestructible. And we lined them all up, and we were just basically evaluating them. And there they are again. And so this functional environment, or a functional design kind of a thing, with that all-weather surfaces, you want to provide a better surface for those animals to be in, a better environment. You want to make money, and you want to save time, okay? Come on. So I got a windbreak on this side. So this is protecting the animals as they eat up on this ridge. So that basically protects them from the wind. So that's a better environment. The all-weather surface protects them from mud. So that's also a better environment. This is how much got wasted. That's 12 inches right there. That's down to the concrete right there. Okay. This is how much got wasted on the outside. Okay. And you can see the manure deposits and stuff. All right. And then, I got a hold of some data. All right. So basically somebody evaluated different systems on all-weather surfaces. So basically they got a cone, a ring, a trailer, and a cradle. All right, so the important things on this is basically look at what percentage of basically, let's see, where's that? Percentage of hay wastage, yeah. Percentage of hay wastage, you got 3.5% right there, 6.1 with a ring, 11.4 with a trailer, 14.6 with a cradle. The important thing to ask is how much did they actually consume? And so percentage of their body weight is 1.8, 1.8, 2%, 1.8. So a lot of people look at these particular structures and they go, well, which one do they like the most? Well, it doesn't matter, okay? Basically, an animal is going to get its 2% of its diet, and that's what it's going to do, or it's going to waste some, and if it's actually muddy and stuff like that, it's actually going to need to consume more, and when it's actually not actually consuming as much. So that's the important part of this. And so then I actually put some numbers to this. Assuming that we're going to feed 3 roll bales to an animal in a given year. If you use the cone, you're going to feed 3.11 bales. Okay? Ring 3.2, cradle 3.4, trailer 3.5, no feeder 7.14. So if I have no feeder, I'm going to go in through that gate and into that pasture over twice as many times compared to these other structures. If you want to put a cost on it at $25 a roll bale, use whatever math you want, it's $77 for this, it's $178 for this, okay? So I'm looking at this, and there's an easy difference of $100. $100 per critter, okay? So let's go back to this. Let's say that there's 12 animals right there. Does this look like a historic site to you all? Yeah, yeah. So basically, let's say that there's 12 animals up there. So basically, I could buy a ring feeder and save $1,200 every year. Well, wait, I had to buy the ring the first year. So let's say high dollar ring, $200. So I'm going to make $1,000 or save $1,000 the first year. I'm going to make $1,200 every year after that for as long as that ring lasts. Now, that's just on feed efficiency. Now I would look at this and I go, why is there any reason to even go into the field? Why don't we just set this off the fence line? Why don't we put in all-weather surfaces and not create as much mud? Why don't we think about where we're going to do this feeding? And then I'm looking at this. I mean, there's still leaves on the trees. This is basically August, okay? So then, going back to our cubbies, so here's an aerial photograph of our cubbies right along the farm road, and here's basically your hoop barns right here. So I have to drive from here to there. So how far do I have to drive? Somebody say not very far. But the farther that distance becomes, the more dysfunctional this design becomes. Okay, so there it is. Spear them, load them up, and so then you can tell this is where the manure is on that gravel and rock. I still have grass, okay, and it's like, all right, and then we're just going to clean that up and utilize that. But again, and also there's these ancillary benefits because I showed you that 30% drop on this, so that when the farm manager comes around to check these critters, normally they're going to be hanging out right here, and so the check-in is a whole lot easier because they're not at the bottom of the hill because this is where they want to be. And then there's a water right here that's problematic because you never want water within 150 feet of where you're feeding, because if you got feed and water in the same location, they'll never leave. Okay? So on that, there's actually a spring right here. So the idea was to develop this spring, make a watering source for them over here, shut this down in the winter so they actually eat, and they can either go back and get a drink or they can go over the hill and get out of the weather. Okay? But there it is. And so then, out of all this work that we did, of all lining those fence line cubbies up, I wrote a publication on it, and then I submitted my plans to the federal government, and the federal government took my set of plans and reconfigured them to a least cost alternative. And basically now, this is actually going to be available through cost share through the Division of Conservation. Supposedly this fall, next spring, they'll come up with $7,500 in tax-free dollars or taxpayer dollars to fund this, which ought to allow you to feed however many, or build however many structures it is. So we've actually done this, and we showed it off, and there's actually producers that actually like this idea so much, they've actually said, well, I'm just going to build a road so I can actually do this. But anyway, and the thing about it is this concept of doing this is nothing new. This is out of a book that was published in the 1950s. You can see from the structures and everything how old this is, okay? The point is it says right here, how not to do it. How not to do it. And how not to do it is to open up this gate and go into this area with these critters to basically put feedstuffs in these bins and mangers. There's no reason for it, for the most part. They'd have fed them from the outside. The efficiency is just so much greater. How much time we got? So this is another structure. This is what I call the Bo Renfro structure. This is another structure that we cost shared through the Division of Conservation. This is concrete throughout. It's 36 wide, 50 long. It's got a raised table right in through here where you put the hay. And so this is available through state cost share. And the thing about it is again, from an engineering standpoint, what I want is the production. But I'm also looking at these environmental benefits as well. So It saves hay because it's elevated, it's got the restrictions on it, saves fuel, labor, and pastures because the critters are coming up to this structure. You're not going out through a gate, you're not creating a congregation area, you're not feeding them in the flat next to the creek because it is flat. You're not doing any of that. Better manure utilization because you got a concrete pad, so you're scraping that up to utilize that, and then you get the increased production, and then you get this better water quality management. The thing about it is again, if you design systems for production, then the environment's taken care of. If you show me a farm that's already doing stuff wrong and then I got to fix it, it's very difficult to do that as opposed to setting it up the right way to begin with. So this is this guy's farm outlined in white, and that yellow circle right there represents where his feeder is. And then this over here, way over here, is where his hay fields are. So he needs to get the manure from here over to here, which again is logistics. And there it is zooming in on it, so you can see that little white square is the concrete structure. You can see a lane right through here, right? So there it is. So how many fields does that one structure have access to? All of them. All 6. But yet I can go on a farm and a guy will have one of these structures out here, which means he needs to open up this gate, then get to that structure, and then open up the gates on that structure. And he's like, Steve, can I get money to put it? No, you can't. You should have done something like this. Because with this design, basically you got access to all 6 fields going back to that center. And the idea, well, let's see, I'll go on. And so here it is. This is on the ground. Got some residual hay left in there after the winter because you got leaves on the trees. There's his row bale storage. So how far does he have to drive? Somebody say not very far. Exactly, all right? And then he's got a manure spreader there, so scrape up this, put that in the manure spreader, take it out there and get some yield benefits off of it. Get on the row bales, shoot back the other way. He's got a race leading to going to this utility shed that's created. He's got water way over here, which is what you want. You never want food and water in the same location. This is a wintertime winter feeding photo. He's got 34 cows going to town on it, okay? You see any calves? No, there's no calves. If there was a calf, it would basically want to lay right there in that nice warm hay, okay? And that's a perfect place for it to get stomped by somebody other than its mother. And then now that's something else you got to tend to, all right? So then he kicks out these girls, and he's like, all right, hit it. And they go down that lane to go out to one of those 3 pastures. But wait, here's your calves. Okay, so where were the calves? So off to the left, he goes, all right, girls, come on. So the girls come down this other lane to utilize that same structure. So he's got 34 in the first herd, 29 in the second. So he's using that one structure for 2 different herds. And as the calves and the mamas come down, the calves break off and they go over here and they got their own little creep area with their own little size. And they got their own little hay ring in there. And everything's all good, nice, well drained. Oh, so on and so forth, sorry. So on and so forth. And again, by design, you cleave off those calves and now you don't have to worry about them. All right, and then he's got this working facility right here that's off of that same structure. Again, putting things together to utilize them effectively. Concrete floor, got a chute in there, got a heater in there, got a refrigerator for his live vaccine, lawn chair, all right? It's got everything but cable, right? So there it is. And then there's a video, and there's that. So now I take that same farm, just to show you, and I've rotated it 90 degrees to show you that there's 3 fields right here, there's 3 fields right here, centralized feeding facility right there, and a lane that connects them all, okay? I redrew it like that, okay? That's the same design, correct? This is an 1860s design, 1860s, all right? So you go at the end of the lane, there's the design, all right? So you go at the end of the lane, these little round circles could be waters. So that means that this one water right here is serving 4 different fields. This one water serving 4 different fields. 2 waters for a 90-acre farm, all right? And it could look something like this, as far as a 4-way. 1 water serving, sorry, shouldn't touch the screen. 1 water serving 4 different fields. This is with electric fence, so all I got to do is just move that spring gate over and they can have access to the other field, all right? Looks like that as far as a live shot. This is another way to do it. This is a tire water. This is also a 4-way. So the thing is on farm design is that you never want to install one more gate on your property than you need. Okay, it's not cost effective. In installing gates, you also want to install the gates as close together as possible. That might not make a lot of sense, but right here it will. So if I got critters in this field right here, I can move them to any one of these 3 other fields, any one of those 3 other fields, and I'm only having to travel 45 feet. That's the benefit of this structure. Some people will want to put in a water in the middle of a pasture. They go, Steve, hey, all I want to do is I just want to put a water out here. That's all I want. Well, why do you want just a water? Because this is more than just a water, okay? With this type of design right here, I can put in portable bunkers for concentrated diets. I can put in my mineral in there. The critters will actually come in here and hang out when it's nasty outside or wet and sloppy in the fields because this is solid footing. So they'll hang out in here, do some camping. I can put an insecticide rope across the gateway to control face flies to get that additional protection. I can use this as a catch pan to bring these animals up and corral them, back a gooseneck up here, load them up, and take them to another farm. I can let them have half this structure, or I can let them have the whole water in itself. If I want to rotate the animals, I don't have to go through a lot of work. I can just, if they're in this field right here, I can just come up in the morning and just open up any one of these gates. And when they come up in the afternoon at 4 o'clock to get a drink, they're going to get their drink and they're going to go to the fresh pasture. There's no moving things. You just make your life easier with this kind of stuff. Cattle guards, cattle grids, cattle bars, whatever you want to call them, I think are great. We got the Princeton Field Day. I'm going down there tomorrow, but it's on Thursday. We've got cattle guards on this farm that we've had since the 60s. Imagine how many gates you would have bought since then. Imagine how much time you would have wasted dragging a gate open and dragging it closed when you could have just driven across it, okay? This is one in a railroad, Nikki. Imagine a train having to stop to open a gate and then stop on the other side to close it. And how is their time any more valuable than yours? It would be inefficient. And it's inefficient for you to drag open gates as well. This is just an old 1948 design showing pretty much what I showed you with the pastures going out with a centralized lane. There's your cattle guard right there. Again, you can take animals out, bring animals back up. You never have to open a gate. It goes around through here. You got concrete feeding bunkers. You got hay stored. You got, you also want to look at orientation because compass points make all the difference in the world. But it's just design. And oh crap. And then, okay, so then with the Eden Shale Field Day coming up, okay, I want to show you this. Because here's the deal. All right, let's back up. Moving hay or making hay on your farm is like the most inefficient thing that you can do from an engineering standpoint, okay? You can waste anything from 100% of it down to about, in a good system, 20%. But 100% is huge. And so anyway, so let's say you go out in a field and you bale your hay, and then now you got all these roll bales out there, and now you got to go get them. How do you move them? Do you move them one at a time, or you put a roll bale on the back and now you're moving 2 at a time? Or do you go get a gooseneck and you load up 10, and then you haul them to some centralized feeding area or centralized staging area and unload them, either inside and outside, and then you got to turn around that winter and you're going to move them again. And how many are you going to move? 1 at a time? Okay, so here's my thing. This is what we design and build at Eden Shale. You would basically bale that hay in the hay field and then move it. And I would prefer to put 10 roll bales on a gooseneck and bring it down to this point right here, stage them and cover them up with a tarp, or you want to put a building over it, roof, that's fine. But the hay's already stored, and so what happens is the cattle actually get on this platform, stick their head through here and start eating. And as they eat, this blue rack essentially rides back on a set of rails that we got on the top of this thing. This is a self-feeder, okay? This is what you want to think about, okay? You think about, why am I doing this drudgery? Why am I doing these extra steps that I don't need to do when you can think about this and design this, all right? Let's take it one, and all this is basically, that's 32 row bales in there. Now it's scalable. So think about what your herd size is and how many you feed and so on and so forth. But I could just as easily take that design right there and pop it in right here. I could just as easily take that design and I could pop it in right here. Now I can come into my centralized compound, never have to deal with the cattle, and load up basically these magazines without ever having to go into the field. I think I'm out of time, or pretty close to it. So I got 5 minutes. So anyway, to me, it's about design. It's about laying out. The whole concept of figuring out how to lay out a farm and what to do and where things should be for economy of labor and materials and inputs and saving on not creating mud and all that other kind of stuff is something that is tremendously neglected, in my opinion. And it's something that you need to give a significant amount of thought to as far as how would I set up something to have this efficiency. Thank you for your time. Questions, comments on anything?
The rail system.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, would you all just have the rails, or is it angle iron and rollers, or?
So Jim, I tell you, my thing was, we had a couple of things. I wanted to do everything basically off the shelf. Okay, so those are store-bought feed panels right there. The silver part down there is the sheet metal galvanized that we put, because I've seen some waste come through those holes. As far as the rails, well, this blue rack, basically that's 2-inch tubular steel. And the rails that this thing is on is also 2-inch tubular steel. That's pretty much what it is. I got rollers on this that basically ride on top of that 2-inch tubing. And seriously, I can actually take 2 fingers and go like that, and it'll move. And it weighs 1,200 pounds. And 32 roll bales is just what I had, because it starts, the topography starts dropping off. So it's Imagineering is what it is, and money. Because you got enough money, I can grow corn on a doorknob. So, but anyway. And, well, yeah. But yeah, 2-inch tubular steel. Easy. And I actually got locks on it too. We just a thumb screw little lock that basically we can put on the rail to basically, if I only wanted them to eat 4 linear feet, I can lock it down and that's all they're going to get. If I wanted them to clean it up, if I want to limit feed them. And that's the beauty of all this. I mean, to me, and this is simplicity is also the thing. And from my standpoint, from a design standpoint, simplicity is a beautiful thing. Why make it complicated when it doesn't need to be? What else? Anybody else?
The orientation of your bales in the feeder?
I got them standing up because we've seen it easier for the animal to cleave off that hay as opposed to trying to eat out the centers.
So net versus string.
Take it off. Take it off when you place it in here. Get it all off, cover it up with a tarp, be done with it.
So just cover your hay up.
Just cover your hay up. Yeah. And if I had to go back and do it, I mean, what I got to do is I got to chimp on things. I can't put a roof on stuff because if I put a roof on it, then they're not going to cost share it at the federal and state and local level. And so I design it without that. But a hoop barn going over this would be ideal. But it's only staged 1 high. A critter can only go up to 6 foot eating height. So those additional bales that if you wanted to put them up there, it's just going to cause a problem. You could suffocate an animal. You could snap a neck, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, stand them on end, take the strings off, cover it up. We good?
Well, it seems like the problem is going to be if anybody tries to input into this, you're going to have to already take into consideration where you have your water tanks already, where you have built fencing in the last 5 or 10 years. You're going to have to try to engineer to get the maximum benefit out of it without throwing away all your other infrastructure.
Which is why you start with a map of your property and you develop a master plan for that, and basically you work that plan over a course of years. As an employee with the university, I can tell you without hesitation, we put in stuff last year that we're ripping out this year because we don't put any thought to it.
We can't afford that.
You can't.
We've been working with people from the Ag University for years. We've laid out where we put our water tanks, and we're filling, where we can rotational graze, and do all those kind of things. Then if we go in and try to do this ideally, then we'll have to rip all that up.
Depends on where it is.
Yeah, so we're going to have to put in something that'll speed centrally and do away with some of the damage we're already doing.
Another thing we got on this is a tire water, just to point it out on this back side. And you want water within 150 feet distance. So when you measure out how far a cow would have to walk from here to there, you basically get that. But that, again, that's part of that planning. Part of planning, too, is with this design right here. With this centralized operation, if I want to expand my operation, which a lot of people like to expand, I can expand in 4 different directions. If I take this operation and put it down in the corner, I can only expand in 2. So a centralized operation is what you want because, again, From here to there, from any corner back to the center is the same distance. If I take it and move this over here, it's the farthest distance to that corner. Again, if it's about moving materials, whether it's cattle or critters or commodities, you want to be in the center of the operation. That's pretty much what you want to do. And then also, too, from a design standpoint, in rotational grazing, you want to move from one field to another field without going through a third field. You want to move from one field back to this centralized operation without going through a second field. So again, it all comes down to planning and design, but that's how it goes. And also management. I mean, I'm not going to build this stuff on certain properties unless I've got somebody that's actually going to adopt it and take it over and be able to commission it. You know, it's just a waste of my time and money, which I do all the time for some people. But anyway. Okay? I'm going to go get some more food if it's available.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Higgins. We'll go ahead and give you a round of applause.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good.
And you'll be around a little bit if people have some individual questions.
Yeah.
Come up and ask you, right?
Yeah.